Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and you're gonna be mildly spicier after watching this video. The phrase is, "Excuse me please." So some context is needed here. I work in a small office. We have maybe 25 people in the office who work there regularly. One of them, Susan, is a distinctly unpleasant person to be around and to work with. I sit 2 desks away from her. I've been there for almost 2 years and in that time, this 59-year-old woman has always treated me with disrespect. I'm 26. Some of our co-workers say that she's just a product of her time, when older people routinely look down on younger people, but I call major BS on that. Anyway, our office is also physically narrow and I'm not a small woman. I'm 5'9" or so, I'm not skinny, so my butt is a little big and my hips are wide. After over a year of her disrespect, I decided to fight back. I made use of my wide hips and big butt. I hip check her chair every time I walk past her. She is always sticking her chair over the entire aisle, even when there's another person sitting behind her. We've repeatedly asked her not to do that, but she does anyway. One day I heard her say, "She did that on purpose." I thought that at least she was beginning to get the message. I kept hip checking her chair. More recently, I was standing behind my chair getting ready to leave after a long day, and I was blocking the walkway. It was mostly deserted in the office, and the only people there were in another room, so I stood behind my chair and did my thing. Susan comes up to my left, and I'm standing between her and the exit. She stands there for 2 full minutes at least, not bothering to ask me to move. Our floor manager, Lawrence, comes up next to her. Susan says, "Lawrence, I can't get through." Before he had a chance to say anything, I raised my voice, but did not yell. "You know, Susan, there is such a phrase as, 'Excuse me please.' If you'd use it, I'd be more than happy to let you by." It was that moment when our boss's boss, Alex, comes up, not having heard a word. "Excuse me, pardon me." I smile at him and let him pass. Then I block Susan from leaving for about 60 more seconds. It was satisfying when Lawrence was laughing and she was fuming. I can't imagine how awkward it would be to stand watching someone pack up their stuff for 2 full minutes instead of just politely asking to get by. And then when the manager comes up, complaining that you can't get past. I also don't agree with the "she's a product of her time" thing, because I have met tons of people her age and up who are not like that at all. She's just a stuck-up Susan. Public holiday shifts. I worked at a place for many years as a cook. My company did catering and cleaning for the facility. After 3 years, I was finally offered permanent part-time, but the condition would be 4 of my shifts every fortnight would be cleaning. I wasn't too keen on it, but I said I would give it a go. After my first 2 cleaning shifts, it just wasn't for me. I couldn't handle the smells and the feces, urine, vomit, blood, so my boss said that's fine. But now you've lost those 4 shifts because he couldn't be bothered tweaking the roster before he released it, as it was being released later that day, which meant I was losing out on 4 public holiday rate shifts. Public holiday rates for us was about $40 an hour. My co-workers and I had been working together for years, and we were all good friends. They said how much it sucked for me losing out on all those shifts. I mentioned to them that they could let me know if they wanted me to do any shifts for them, so they could have family time, and they all said, "No way, I'm not giving up any of my shifts, that's a you problem, not an us problem," and bits and pieces after that about how I was just going to have to deal with not having any money, and I overheard them talking about how rude I was for even suggesting it. Fair enough, I guess. Anyway, the petty revenge part. As it started getting closer and closer to the holidays and their families started to make plans, suddenly everyone started asking me if I could cover their shifts. I said, "No, sorry, I've made plans for those days now." And they would reply with, "Come on man, you said you'd be okay if we asked, and my family is coming from this town far away and no one else can cover them." I would shrug and reply with, "That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. Sorry." I did it to 3 different people who were bitching about me behind my back when the original conversation happened. Yeah, I could have used the money, but it was the best 4 days off I have ever had. Treat me like my boss's secretary? Let's see how that goes for you. A couple of years ago, I worked for a small team within a larger organisation that ran a rather niche grant program. It was literally my boss, let's call him Charles, me, and 2 part-time consultants who did our finances and bookkeeping. My boss and I had a great rapport. He hired me to essentially run large aspects of our program and give me pretty much unilateral oversight of the key elements of it, from program design and development to execution. He was a great manager in this respect. He provided a lot of mentoring and guidance, but mostly got out of my way and only wanted me to escalate the big stuff that I felt rose to the level. While I didn't love the job itself, I loved having so much freedom. I was sort of bridging that gap, moving from a young professional into a mid-career professional, and so this offered a lot of growth opportunities. One thing that made my boss great was that he always had my back. One day, I was in the office pretty much alone. My boss was on a board of a few organisations and he was off at a half-day meeting. Our offices were right across from each other, so I could typically see him when he came and left, and I could hear his phone when it rang. That morning, his phone was ringing and ringing and ringing. Then finally, my phone rang. It was the executive director, AD from here on out, of one of the organisations we worked with. An older man, maybe in his 70s. The conversation went something like this. OP speaking, how can I help you? I've been calling Charles all morning, but he's not answering. Yes, he's at a half-day board meeting. Is there something I can help you with? I doubt it. Maybe you could just check his calendar and put a call with me on there for when he's back? I'm sorry, I wish I could, but I don't have access to his calendar, so I can't see what he has in the afternoon, and I can't add things to his calendar. I'm sure he'll be back soon. AD cuts me off. That's unacceptable. How does his secretary not have access to his calendar? Who sets his meetings? Now, here's the thing. While I am my boss's employee, I am not his secretary. I don't have access to his calendar, and my boss sets his own meetings. Not only that, but I had corresponded with and even met this ED in the past. My signature block and business card clearly say Program Manager, as does my bio on our webpage. Alas, this wasn't the first time someone had assumed that I was my boss's secretary. It happens. I was in my late 20s at the time, and as a young professional woman working for a man, it seemed a common misconception. Usually, it's not a big deal. Normally, I clarify my role and people feel a little embarrassed and we go on about our lives. So I clarified my role for the ED. Just to clarify, I'm not Charles's secretary. He doesn't have a secretary. I'm actually the program manager. Charles manages his own schedule on his own. If you want to shoot us both an email, I'll make sure that he responds and sets up a time to talk to you. Otherwise, when he comes back, I'll let him know you called so you can arrange a meeting. ED cuts me off again. Well, I have an important question for him, and it's unacceptable that I can't set up a meeting with him, and I also can't get an answer to it right away. How is this good client service? Well, you know, I am the program manager. Why don't you just tell me what your question is about, and let's see if I can help you. The ED explained that he called to talk about the application process and requirements for a program of ours, one that I actually ran. Not only that, but the nature of his questions were not so complicated that it necessitated escalating to my boss. These were things I could easily help him with. Well, you're in luck. I'm actually the one who runs that program, not Charles. I've designed that application process, and I would actually be able to answer your question with a lot more detail than Charles would. He would just defer you to me. Why don't you tell me what questions you have, and I can answer them. There was a long pause. Then ED said in a patronising tone, Young lady, I'm sure you're very bright, and I'm sure you want to be helpful, but I'd really prefer to talk to Charles. Why don't you just take a message for him for me, alright? Now I'm kinda pissed. I'm about to tell him where he can shove his message when I see my boss coming down the hallway. So I tell the ED that he's in luck. I see Charles now. Let me go tell him you're on the line and get back to you. So I put the ED on hold and intercept my boss. I kind of explain the situation. My boss chuckles to himself and says, transfer him over. I transfer the call, and I can hear my boss pick up the phone. Chuck speaking. Oh, hi there, ED. How can I help you? Yes. Uh-huh. Yes, I was at a half-day board meeting. You have a question about which program? Okay, what's your question? Uh-huh. You want to know about the application process and criteria? Uh-huh. Okay. Well, have you spoken to my program manager, OP? Well, she's actually the one who manages that program. Yes, she actually designed the application process. Sorry, ED, I wouldn't be able to answer that specific question. No, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Yes, that's right, OP manages that entire program, and she's really the expert on it. Let me go see if she's in her office. I hear my boss put the phone on hold. He takes a long pause before he gets back on. I'm sorry, ED, but it appears she must have stepped away from her desk. Why don't you send her an email, and I'm sure she'll get back to you. No, again, I'm sorry, but she's really leading on that program. You'll have to speak with her. I could transfer you to her voicemail if you wish. No? Okay. Do you have her email? Great. So send her an email and I'm sure she'll get back to you on your questions ASAP. The ED didn't email me for a couple of days, and when he finally did, I helpfully walked him through all the details of the program he was interested in. Oh, that boss is an absolute legend. And it would have been so incredibly satisfying to have Edie coming back a few days later with his tail firmly between his legs. Okay, so that's all for r/PettyRevenge. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!